And now we're going to start, and I think we're going to start recording at this point, and start the session, okay? So the way this goes is like this. We usually treat a problem that usually is being asked in one of the companies. And what we're going to do today is the diagnostic type of problem, okay? So what is it? And what we're going to do is, first I'm going to present a framework that, works for me. And of course, if, there's a framework that works for you better, please use it. And after I put the framework there, what we're going to do is then have somebody, ask the question, answer the question, and then we can provide feedback to that person. Okay? All right. So the question today. All right, let's see. Okay, this is called the, diagnostic type of problem, okay? And the question that I had was if the Uber ridership, which is the riders, right? Or Uber ridership was down at 10%. Then, how do you find the problem? How do you find problem? And ideas to fix it. How to fix, or what would you do? So this is a typical type of question, and it's very ambiguous on purpose, okay? And what they want to see is how you think, okay? So they ask this question at Uber, they ask it at Facebook, they ask it at Google, right? And you have to think about, when you are being asked these questions, think about what the interviewer is trying to actually gauge, right? What are they trying to get from you and to see? So they are testing you, first of all. Can this person, narrow down the scope of this question? Very ambiguous. And that's usually the role of the PM, is to get an ambiguous total problem and then bring it down to a level, and decompose it so that it can be worked on. And then the next thing is, is this person, asking the right questions, right? And then they want to see how you think. So a good framework for this that works for me is, first of all, say, okay, I need to characterize this problem a little bit better, okay? And this, by characterize, some of the questions that I would usually ask, and put yourself in the shoes of the PM, right? If this is actually happening to you, and you know that your company has a log of data, right, that they are getting, the first question in my mind would be, well, where is this happening? Okay, is this happening across the world? I want to go and see the database. The next thing is like, hey, is this a progressive thing, or is this sudden? And for how long has this? If it's progressive, how long, right? Because if it's progressive, you know that it's something more systemic, right? Whereas if it's or it's part of the business model. Whereas if it's sudden, you know that there's maybe some circumstances, something changed, right? The other thing is what type of ride? Uber has different type of products. So what's the product they're talking about, right? The other thing is users. And in here you can say, hey, is this brought down by new users, or is it like existing, right? And I think this is going to be, once you get an answer from here, you can guess this one. Okay. The other one is on what platform are we seeing this? Is this specifically to some operating system? Is this, iPhone, or is it like Android stuff, right? Because that could tell you, okay, if it's only through iPhone, then it has to do maybe with some update, on that operating system. Okay, so the first thing is characterize. Then once you have an idea of this, right, then you can go and think, okay, let me think of what could be an internal problem. Okay. Now, depending on the answer that you have here, you're gonna think about different types of internal problems, okay? So typical thing could be, hey, something changed, maybe it's the UI, okay? Or maybe there's a new feature, right? I'm gonna put here, new feature or UI, okay? So if it's not that, you know, you can think of several, I'm just throwing this out there, I'm not gonna talk about all of them. But another thing could be, for example, it could be, let me get my list here. So I have a list of this. 1 second, let me just find a file here that I was going to look before I started on this. Here. All right, so another reason could be, hey, maybe there's something internally in infrastructure, you know? Infrastructure, internal infrastructure of the network, or, you know, the database, you know, whatever it is. Maybe there's something that has to do with APIs. Maybe maybe somebody's doing it's unlikely, but for Facebook, sometimes this is a good thing to try, is maybe there's an A/B internal testing that is, you know, changing sort of like the averages of things. Maybe there's a marketing campaign that is going on that is changing some of the numbers. Maybe there is other things. Okay, so right, all this stuff. Okay, so and then there's external. It could be an external situation also. And what would I look at here? Okay, the obvious thing, of course, is first competitors, right? So maybe there's a competitor out there that is changing the landscape. It could be also, maybe there's regulatory things, you know, government or regulations. This definitely is something that could impact Uber, you know, because it's such a regulated space. I mean, it's becoming, not before, but now it's becoming that. It could be, you know, it could be spam. You know, sometimes, not for this particular instance, but if you have a different example, I'm just putting all the different things that I would look at. It could be an external network failure. It could be, and then you can think about external events, right? It could be holiday event, or it could be an event, a holiday, or for example, sporting event, like the World Cup, right? All right, and you can think of other ones, right? But the process here that I want to, you know, what I want to emphasize here is that when they ask you this question, you're not going to go and write all this, right? This should be in your head already, right? And you're going to pick and choose whatever makes sense, right? So for here, for example, and once I characterize this drop in ridership, then I will have more or less an idea of what kind of internal things I should be testing. You're like a doctor, right? I'm not going to test things that don't make sense, right? Because, you know, you have to make sense in your answer, right? I see people that go through this as if they were machines, right? They go like boom, 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 boom. But it's like, why are you asking that? That doesn't make any sense, right? You have to be looking at things depending on the answers that you have got before, all right? Okay, so let's start with this, you know, Uber ridership. And, you know, who would want to volunteer for practice? And, you know, always giving constructive feedback, of course. You know, that's always my motto.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
When you say ridership, are you saying rides per users or actual number of users that are declining? Or is it the actual, or is it money being made? What's the metric there?
It's the number of rides. Number of rides.
Thank you.
That's again, and that you know, of course, the first thing is clarifying questions, which you know, who asked this question? Just
David.
David, yes. All right. Good question. So let's start with somebody. Somebody wants to try it.
I can jump in, Milena. This is Himanshu if nobody else wants to.
Yes, of course.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to be your interviewer. Hey, Himanshu, welcome to Uber.
Thank you.
So we're going to throw you a question about how to solve this problem. This usually happens at Uber. In fact, it actually happened recently.
Mm-hmm.
So we would like to see how you think when you have this problem, and tell us, how would you find what the problem is, and then maybe some ideas on how to fix it.
Sure. And the problem here is user ridership has gone down by 10%. You want me to find the problem and maybe give some suggestions to fix it, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So, as I understand, Uber's, just so that we are on the same page, Uber's business model is that you match riders with drivers, and you basically take a 20% or however that cut is on the transaction, dollar transaction that takes place, right? And Uber is available in, I think, 700 cities or so right now. So you have a pretty wide and large network. Now, one question I have is necessarily is the rider, ship going down by 10%? Is that a bad thing? Because overall, in terms of your business, it's like a P into Q business, like, number of people taking this and the volume of the transactions. So, are you also seeing the volume of the transactions go down in terms of the number of rides that happen? Or is it that the overall revenue that you make is still at the same level? Or is it making sense? I don't know if I'm making sense
So
in terms of the question.
I think that one key metric that we have is rides, because the more rides, people are paying for rides, right?
Right,
so that gives us a sense of how much money, whether the money is growing or not, right? The more rides, the better, right?
Right. I think then maybe I'll ask one quick clarifying question, which is like, is the dollar amount or is the volume of those transactions or the per unit volume, has it remained same or similar over time? Right. If that has remained similar or same, then I do agree with you that more rides is more money, less rides is less money.
Right. So you're saying are you talking about the growth rate? I'm not sure what you mean by volume.
Yeah, I think I'm asking, have you also observed a similar decline or in the per unit transaction?
Per
For
unit,
example,
what do you mean by that?
so this is what I mean. So if your on average the ride costs $10, and in that particular market the number of rides have gone down by 10%, do you guys still see in those markets that the $10 volume, which is like how much people are paying, has that on average gone down, or has it remained static, or has it gone up?
Okay, so this is what I want you to work on.
I think he's talking about price per every mile traveled.
So let's do it this way. Forget about, don't you worry about the money that we're making, okay? Don't worry about that. We're going to change prices and all that stuff. Don't worry about that. Just all we're saying is like, look, last month we had 1,000 rides.
Yep.
Now we are having 900, and we don't like it. Okay.
Let's just focus on that then. Okay, makes sense. Okay, so just so I understand, you said it's last month. So could you give me a little bit more information?
I just gave you that as an example. I'm not saying explicitly that happened last month.
Okay. Sorry. Okay, so let's then start with like, when did you see this problem happen, and is this problem just related to that? Is this problem something that happened last year as well, or in the last season as well? If you can give me a little bit more information there, like when did you see this, and how long has it been going, and is it still going right now?
Yeah, this is happening in Hong Kong.
Okay, Hong Kong, interesting. And it happened, or you guys noticed it last week or last month?
We noticed it for the last 2 weeks.
Last 2 weeks, okay, and it's still ongoing. Awesome. And given the time of the year right now in Hong Kong, is there anything like special that is ongoing in Hong Kong now, or maybe just before those 2 weeks? Maybe there was some, I don't know, some special event in Hong Kong, given the political situation and everything going on there. Is there a is that affecting the is there regulation maybe from the government on like if people can be out and about in terms of hailing a Uber, or are businesses open? I'm just like alluding to the larger political situation in the country.
You mentioned regulation, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there are certain things that are going on in Hong Kong,
Right.
and actually, I'm gonna tell you what it is.
Right.
Take it out of the park. But basically, what's happening is that drivers are being asked by the regulatory, governments, by the governments there to show proof of insurance.
Ah, interesting. Interesting.
Yep. And many drivers don't have it.
Yep.
And so the police is actually, giving them what do you call this? Notes, right? That they have to pay.
Tickets.
Tickets and
Okay.
stuff like that,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
So looks like that's scaring the drivers, right?
Okay.
So now, okay, so good. So tell me, looks like that, you find out that this is one problem, but how does that affect the number of riders? The number of rides.
Yeah. So I think, as I understand Uber's network, you have riders on one side and drivers on the other side. So let's just call the riders demand and the drivers as supply. So basically, the way I understand the situation is the supply side is being constrained because these drivers who probably don't have a legitimate insurance are worried about getting this ticket, and the people who have a ticket probably don't want to take further chances by driving. So the supply side is being constrained, and the wait times that riders may be facing may be much longer than usual. And riders are probably choosing other forms of transportation like bus or maybe just walking or other taxis or their own cars, which is basically bringing the overall number of rides down in the system. So that's one hypothesis I have.
So you think your hypothesis is that people are waiting so long, they say, forget it. I'm going to use my own car or something else, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Can I jump in?
Yeah,
okay.
Sure.
I have a question. Is this decrease in ridership happening only with Uber, or is it happening with other ride-sharing companies as well?
Yeah, that's a good question, right? And we have tried to get information about that, but it's very difficult to get competitive information. So it would be nice to hear from you, how would you go about that? You don't have that data.
Yeah, I think one thing we could do is like our Uber employees could just see how long it's taking for them to get to Lyft or other networks, right? So just like a scrappy way to find out if the network is choked for everybody, and also like a quick flash survey with consumers. We can ask them, we can reach out consumers directly and see if that's the reason. The other thing we could do is even within our app, we could give price promotions. We could see if we basically maybe offer very cheap rides. Do people stay and take the ride even if they compensate for the longer time duration? So it kind of like will prove our hypothesis.
Okay, so you're going already into the solution, right?
Right.
Let's not go there yet.
Okay.
So you said hypothesis, it could be the wait time, and then Joanna said, hey, we can also see if the competition has this problem. Okay.
Yep.
Melina, I have one more question. Is it possible to measure the utilization of the drivers on the network and map a trend? Like if the typical driver is utilized 50% versus they were being utilized 85% like a month before, then we know that it might not be a supply constraint and eliminate one of the possibilities.
So, I already gave that information that it is a supply cost. Like, we already know that, right? We already know that drivers don't want to drive because they don't have insurance.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't have to test that. That's a given, right?
Okay.
I think that what we're trying to ascertain is how does that affect the riders, right? Because riders, the number of rides have gone down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I think that one hypothesis here that we want to test is the wait time, right?
Yeah, I have one more hypothesis actually. I mean, maybe people are doing a lot of like these ride sharing in the sense like whereby you can do Uber Pool and other things, and just because people know it's harder to get the Ubers or the supply is lower, so overall rides are going down. Maybe not. Overall rides won't go down. Yeah, not the best of hypotheses, I guess.
Okay.
I mean, yep.
So what I wanted to, let's work with this, okay? You're saying, okay,
Yep.
look, at the outset, what I would do here is to come and what you did, Himanshu, which is say,
Yep.
hey, why? First is that why is the use on that it would affect riders? And you said,
Yep.
well, either the experience is bad, right? Or they have to pay a lot more, right? I think if you come up from that angle, you come up as a person that is going by intuition, right? And then saying in logic, right? And saying, okay, it could be these two situations. That could be the two causes, okay? Let me start with the first one, wait time. Now, how am I going to actually prove the hypothesis, right?
I think Sandhya, I think maybe there's a lot of background noise. If you can mute yourself.
Oh yeah, Joanna.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry. I just had one more hypothesis, if we could consider that and if it's valid. It's a trust issue. Like, for example, if we are finding that more and more Uber drivers don't have insurance, maybe the riders don't trust the recruiting process of Uber for, onboarding drivers. So maybe that is an influence in, reducing ridership, and that's maybe leading users to take other competitor, rideshare products like maybe Lyft or, something else.
No trust in drivers. Okay, good. That's another hypothesis. Good. Okay, so let's work with this too. What I want to get at is like, hey, now you have a hypothesis. Now you have to test it and prove it, right? So you have, the first thing that I would do is to go look at the data, right? So what data are you going to look at?
Yeah, so I think for the wait time, absolutely, I'm going to look at the average wait time in these 2 weeks versus the prior weeks, right? I'm going to be looking at more like a, not just prior week, but even prior year during these same weeks, so that to be 100% sure it's not a seasonality thing, anything going on there. I think I'll also look at, what was the typically at what point do people wait and then just cancel the ride in the past, and now how are people staying longer or are they staying shorter? Of course, like there is something going on if to prove the hypothesis. Like, so I will try to look at the data around wait time.
That makes sense. Okay, so what you would do is to get your data science, look at the data, and maybe look at the average. We think they already probably have a threshold, right? So what percentage of those riders actually waited beyond the threshold, and that sort of confirms, gives you information. Another thing that you mention is, hey, let's have our employees go take the competition and see what's going on there.
Right.
And then there's this other hypothesis of loss trust that another member talked about. Not trusting drivers, that could be an issue, right? And so I think that in that case, it would be more like a qualitative kind of, interview.
Qualitative survey, and we could also, the other A/B thing we could do there is like, if our recruitment process is similar to what Lyft has or some competitor has, then this issue should affect them as well, right?
Yeah.
So then I can do a quick A/B test and find out if this is a general sentiment or is it a sentiment against your Uber.
Yeah, sounds good. Okay, so it looks like you pretty much got it right off the bat because there were, there was data here that was really pointing at things, right? The one thing that we didn't test is like another hypothesis is the price is too high.
Yeah. I think that's a very good hypothesis too.
Price too high. Maybe there's a surge in price, because they have this automatic search.
Yep.
Price search, right, mechanism. Okay, so maybe there's something wrong here. Okay, maybe
Yep.
the algorithm is not working properly. Something's going on. That's very unlikely, but I would check on that too, right?
Yep.
All right, and I would talk to my engineers to check on that. All right. So that we didn't go. Well, we did. If this is the internal part, right? I would check if something changed, right? The algorithm changed.
Yep.
And then the other stuff is not relevant, right? So you see what I'm doing. I remember in my head, I had all these points. I'm just picking this one, okay?
Yep. Makes sense.
Okay. Well, would it be that, let's say is it an external problem?
I think just looking at your external list, I have another hypothesis which we did not mention earlier is like it could be a pure competitive move. Whereby, maybe Lyft is saying, given or maybe taking advantage of the situation and saying like, you know what, we have much better insurance, or maybe they say that, we'll offer much cheaper rates during this time, right? So it could be purely a competitive move.
It could be a competitive move, right?
Yeah.
Correct. Definitely, if you go into regulations, if you had gone to this point and I haven't told you,
that
was the problem, then you would have spotted it right here, right? So that's why it's good to be easy, right? Mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive. And then these don't make sense, right? These don't apply.
True.
Under external, just like the competitor, it could be also a substitute. Maybe new train lines have opened up in Hong Kong, and people just don't want to be clogged in the roads. Cheaper and nicer trains.
Along that same lines, it could also be something like, a bike share or a scooter share or something like that in a big city, which wouldn't have the issue of insurance and would also be a lower cost and probably higher availability.
That's very interesting because that could be here, right? Is there a competitive product within your products themselves? Because they have, the scooters already, right? Other products within. Okay, very good.
Why would that be under internal?
Because it would be, if Uber also has scooters, they also have.
Oh, okay, got it.
Maybe the scooters are going high in demand, right?
Got it.
Very cool. All right. So very good. Now the takeaway that I said here is like you don't go through the entire process one by one, right? You just go through logic, right? And you pick and choose what you're going to attack based on the answers that you had before, right? Cool. All right, so let's move on into another question here, which is usually these questions, they don't go one, right? They're going to ask you one, and then they are going to ask 4 follow-ups, okay? So let's say, so pacing is really important. So let's say that, we want to find a solution for this, this insurance thing, okay? Let's say that it's the insurance, and we want the Uber drivers to have that insurance. What kind of solution would you think? You mentioned?
So, yeah, sure. I think one of the solutions I could say is like Uber self-insures itself, the drives and the rides. Enterprise, as you know, a rental company in US, they also self-insure. So it's something that has been looked at. Number 2 is maybe Uber says that, I will get you third-party insurance for the drivers, and it becomes a condition for driving, but I will kind of subsidize some amount of it, right? So as as you take more rides, I'll be able to share the cost with the driver. So it's not 100% cost for Uber, right? Some other innovative ways could be that, Uber could basically, what else could they do in terms of insurance quickly? I mean,
Hire a
Uber
bunch
could,
of lawyers and lobby for it.
right, right.
So
Oh,
they can actually they can subsidize the drivers and let the drivers buy the insurance. That way they can
right,
hedge. If the insurance
exactly,
prices go up, they're hedged that way,
exactly,
passed on.
exactly. I think the third option also could be that
Okay.
I think very similar to what you said is maybe Uber works with the regulators a little bit and says like, we can show you how much risk there is really. Maybe they can create a fund like at the government level and say like if something happens, like government could take the job of doing the insurance and they could create a float or like a pool of money. So
Sorry,
yeah,
can you repeat that? Can you repeat that, Himanshu?
yeah, I think the idea there is like it happens a little bit in India, like the government actually manages the insurance
Mm-hmm.
companies. So what Uber could do is work with the regulator, show them what the accident rates have been with Uber drivers, what the payout has been, and then calculate how much money they will have to probably put into a fund. And that fund could be in an escrow that the government manages, kind of. And so it becomes like an insurance pool, which is managed by third-party insurance regulators or such. So those models also have worked in the past.
Okay. So now let me put here some challenge. Okay.
Hmm.
Let's say that we don't want to lose money.
Yeah. Yep.
So in putting insurance in place and all the stuff is going to take some time.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Find me another solution that I can have like while we work that out.
Okay, so the goal here is like we don't want to lose any money from the ridership, right? From
Yeah.
the 10% which is down. But are we okay to lose, or maybe not lose, invest some money in the insurance, to give insurance to these people or help them getting insurance? That is fine, I'm hoping, right?
Right. Yes.
Okay. But you want something quick as well, like you don't want like these things to get set up.
So
I
the most
think,
important thing is we don't want to lose momentum. We don't want to lose
yeah.
ridership. Oh,
Yeah, so I think what Uber could do is like just go and
can
buy
you guys see the
insurance.
board? Guys, can
Huh?
you see the board? Can you see the board?
Yeah, yes, we can.
Okay. Yeah. So
Yeah,
Anna, you need to pin my window. All right.
yeah. Yeah, I would say then the easiest and quickest way is like Uber buys group insurance for all the entire fleet, right?
Yeah.
Uber has great negotiation power. It can go to a insurance company and negotiate very quickly a pay-as-you-go model. And it can say, okay, I'll buy this insurance for a month or 6 months, whatnot,
Yeah.
by the time we create our own insurance. But yeah, I'll foot the bill for giving insurance immediately. And all of my drivers come on the road without fear of getting a ticket.
Okay. Cool. So now, let's say, what could be the problem with this? What are trade-offs? Tell me what are trade-offs here.
I I think that I think the big trade-off is that insurance companies may not want to work with Uber because typically what happens is these insurances are for a private car and they're not for commercial use, right? So the cost that these companies may ask for Uber could be prohibitively high, right? And also you can't like just buy insurance for any car and just apply it. I mean, maybe these cars need to be evaluated or the driving records need to be evaluated. So it might be very ambitious that we'll just buy insurance for everybody in our fleet, but it may not be as practical for implementation. So
So it
there may
could
be
be
some
very costly. You're saying that it could be very costly.
yeah, I'm saying it could be very costly. Number two is I'm saying the time saving that we are hoping for may not be that much. I mean, it might still need some time to
Yeah.
to roll this through.
And Melina, there's another angle. If Uber buys the insurance for these cars, technically these will become assets on Uber's balance sheet, which will be huge and very risky. So I don't think Uber can buy insurance for these cars.
But I mean, it's like saying my wife can buy insurance for me even if I own the car. She doesn't need to own my car, right?
No. But Uber cannot. Yeah, no. That's a different entity altogether.
So can you explain that a little bit more? Who gave this input right now? Sorry. Who was
Pinaki, I
speaking
think.
right now about the balance sheet?
Yeah, this Pinaki. Yeah.
Yes, Pinaki, could you explain a little bit more?
So the moment you buy an insurance, then you're acknowledging it's an asset you own. So that's why you're insuring the asset, right? So that
Yeah.
asset will effectively come on your balance sheet as an asset. Today, Uber does not own any of the assets.
Yeah.
So that will bring in a lot of liability. To counter what Himanshu just said, when you give the example of your wife and yourself, you essentially are a single entity buying that insurance. So that's a very different
That's actually
case
true.
than this.
That is
So-
true. That is true.
And to add to Pinaki's point is that Uber does not consider any of these drivers employees anyway.
Exactly.
So they won't give this benefit. One solution that I would think of would be to sell them insurance rather than
Yeah.
buy insurance for them if
Yeah.
they were to do that.
Yeah.
But
Actually,
partnering and collaborating with third party insurance would be the quickest way to achieve that.
Yeah.
I think actually kind of we're looking at this problem a little bit backwards, because I think the first question to really ask is, are we looking for basically immediate change in metrics, or are we really looking for quality metric changes? And that would be like really like what are those things that over the long term are going to mean a long-term growth for a company, not just like a short-term increase or something that is might come and go. And looking at it that way, I mean, I think that the only really logical solution in this would be to have insurance as a requirement and have it as part of the sign-up process, which would initially probably lower, initially lower the ridership. But if you look at it in the long term, if this is a regulatory requirement, any other rideshare service, so any other car sharing service is going to have that same barrier. But if you build your platform, your reputation on basically, we only hire drivers that are insured. In the short term, it might be a little bit slow, but in the long term, you're building basically that trust, and you're building kind of a long-term base of drivers who will be reliable and who can stay with you and that the riders can depend on.
Yeah. So it's like a short vision. You get a short-term benefit out of it, but it will impact you in the longer term. I don't want to do that. Okay, that's a good point.
I also
Yeah.
have one more idea. So this idea is around, different tiered pricing for drivers. So drivers who have insurance, even if they are currently on Uber's network, or if they are coming from Lyft or others, give them a higher rate. Basically, don't charge 20% from them, charge 10% or 5%, because this will do two things. It will increase the utilization of drivers who actually have insurance. And number two, it will attract drivers from other networks. So basically, you're just looking for qualified drivers, so you get them.
Oh, yeah.
So you're saying lower the commission fee for those that have insurance.
For folks that have insurance, the drivers that have insurance, so that you can attract people from competitors, and you can also increase the utilization of people who have insurance and are in your network, right? And again, this is a shorter term fix, like until the time you have your own insurance, like erode some profit margin, but get your ridership up.
Yeah. Okay. Those are
But let's also think the other way around. Like, if this is an insurance and a regulatory issue, and I'm just throwing it out there, why can't we? So first of all, this model that Himanshu just proposed, right? Then Uber absorbs the cost of doing business, right? But given that this is a regulatory issue, why can't we pass on some of the cost to the consumer? Because the other competitors will also have the same issue. So why should the industry absorb the cost for a regulatory issue?
Yeah, it's tricky, right? That becomes more complex because you have to test that. And that's a good point. You can test
That's a good point, yeah.
Which brings me to the testing. all these questions. They will ask you diagnostics, and they're going to ask you for, what's the trade-offs, and then they're going to ask you, okay, test your solution. Right? And so let's say that we go with Himanshu's idea, right? You lower the commission fee to get all those drivers that have insurance and stuff. How do you know if you're successful?
Hi. So I have a question though for that. It's great if you lower the commission fee for drivers who do have the insurance, but how are you going to notify the drivers who don't have insurance about this drop in commission fee? Also, you may want to consider putting a deadline in terms of when people have to get their insurance by, otherwise they're kicked off the platform.
Yeah.
Right. I think right, but that's a good point. But I think that's sort of kind of like implementation, I would say, right? That would be an implementation issue, and definitely something to think about. And once they say, okay, let's go with this idea, let's make sure that we implement it right, and then we'll add those points, right? And after you add those points, then the question is, how do you know you have been successful?
Yeah, I think one way I would do it is, to answer your question, Milena, in terms of like, how do you set up this test and how do you know if you're successful, is basically for the drivers that have insurance, and Uber has information on that, you can give them a short-term kind of a promotion. You can say for the next month or 3 months, because you have insurance, you are a privileged driver or like a premium driver for us, we will unlock better rates for you. And what we then measure is whether they give people more rides because they have this thing. Like maybe this guy was giving 10 rides on average. Now he gives 15 because he's making more money. And versus our.
But you're saying that you're going to hire new drivers.
Yeah, I'm going to do that too. Yeah. So for the new hire, so this is for the existing. So this test will have two components. So for the existing ones, I'll do an A/B test between people who don't have insurance. I'll keep the current rate of 20%. For the guys who have insurance, I'll offer this as like a 2 to 3 month, premium driver promotion where you get a better rate. And I'll try to see whether the people who got this better rate, did they give more rides to consumers? And if they did, then it tells me something that, this model is kind of working. In terms of new drivers, what I would do is Uber already does a lot of marketing promotion to hire new drivers. Their CACs are as high as $500. And in this scheme, basically, we'll go out and reach drivers from other networks or in general do marketing that if you have insurance, you get this better rate, right? There is a little bit of a risk of a backlash from existing Uber drivers, but I feel it would be a good thing because it will incentivize them to go and get that insurance and then go and get that better rate. So it's a net, it will be.
One of the things that, we like to do here is to do a test, and we have really defined metrics, okay?
Yeah.
So for testing the first part, which is an existing drivers, is your promotion going to lead them to have, give more rides, okay? So the metric that we want to test here, right?
Yeah, utilization rate or number of rides.
Number of rides per driver.
Yeah, number of rides per driver. On the other side, for the new drivers, you have to test the conversion rate. So if you were sending an email to 50, drivers, or maybe doing promotion to 50 drivers and 10 were converting, with this new promotion, the conversion rate should be higher to say, 15 or 20%. So basically, you choose the metric and then you choose how much you should see for this to be viable.
Okay, so number of conversions over total emails or whatever.
Exactly.
Whatever you're sending, right?
Yeah, whatever we are sending.
Okay, good. So for this one, you certainly can do an A/B test.
Right.
Yep.
Because in the old, before they got the promotion and after they got the promotion.
Yep.
And for this one, there is also. Yeah, there's also conversion, right?
Yeah, there's conversion rate. Yep.
You can do an A/B test here. Okay, cool. And, is there something that we need to be thoughtful about this test, right? Because you don't want to have signals that are going to influence your result, right?
Right.
So is there something in particular we need to have in mind here with existing drivers?
Yeah. I think no, I think that's right. I think basically, one thing we need to care about is in this network, because you've seen a 10% dip. In general, for the existing drivers, you may see a natural increase in the number of rides that they're taking, right? Because with surge pricing and all, they probably already get better rates, or better overall volume, right? So that could be a conflicting factor that might show that our promotion for existing drivers is working, but maybe it is coming from this other thing that in general the network was overloaded. So drivers who have insurance in general are like not afraid. They're like, yeah, I'll go out.
You need
Yeah,
to test in situations where there is no search zone or search time.
exactly.
Outside search, we're saying.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
outside search, otherwise it will conflate your results. Also, like for promotions, like the problem is like, yeah, you can go and do these A/B tests for conversion, but there could be other conflicting factors that are improving the conversion, uh, which may either show worse results or better results for the actual conversion that we see. I mean, it can't be completely pure A/B test, right? So because the question I have in mind is what is Lyft doing in that case, right? If they come up with an amazing promotion, even better than us or matching us, then our results will basically not really work, and even our strategy will not work. So it's a little bit of a slippery slope in that area as well. That the Lyft will also know that we are giving better rates. They might just match us and say like, okay, I'll give you $800. Yeah.
Basically, you're saying, hey, we should test this in a situation where the competition hasn't changed something.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, we have to really make sure that all the other things are the same, but in real world they are usually not the same. Like there are multiple things that change at the same time.
Okay, cool. All right, so we're running out of time, but I hope that you guys got a flavor of this kind of question, right? And the way to actually diagnose and the follow-up questions that you're going to be asked, right? And so when you actually give an answer to this, start thinking like without they prompting you. You start thinking, these are all, these are the solution, but this is the thing that is not so good with this. This is the thing that's not so good with that. Maybe I'm going to prioritize this because we haven't done that, right? But I could say, hey, I'm going to prioritize based on, let's say, the one that is less risky, okay? Or that's going to have less longer term effects. And then you immediately go into, yeah, let's talk about now, I'm going to pick one solution. Now I'm going to talk about the trade-offs of that solution, because everything that you do will have a trade-off, right? And so if you yourself start, talking in those terms, like you are actually questioning yourself about your own decisions, they love that, right? They want to see that from the PM, right? And they definitely are into A/B tests. So once you decide on something, now how are you going to measure that you're successful, right? So you need to define the metric, and then you need to talk about how you do those tests. All right.
Awesome.
Let's
Thank
go
you.
now, guys.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Hey,
Thank
Malina, I
you.
have a question for you.
Who is it?
This is Sri Krishna. Hi.
David.
Yeah, I've been a silent participant here. So this question is regarding the first part of the question, that the problem that we have, right? And that is like, what's the reason for, we were basically investigating the reasons for the 10% drop in our ridership.
Yeah.
And in our current case, we were fortunately able to pinpoint the reason to an external reason, or we were able to get to the reason very fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So my question is, in an actual interview, let's say if that happens, I mean, if it doesn't happen, it's well and good. We keep trying different things in our framework, and we narrow down to until we get to the right reason.
Right.
But what if we get to the reason? I mean, and if the interviewer says that, okay, this is what we are seeing. We are seeing a problem with the insurance. At that point, is it okay to pivot our solution to make sure that we test that hypothesis? Or because I think here we have considered other steps in our framework, despite knowing the fact that there is something wrong with insurance, and that could primarily be the reason for the ridership drop. Do you think it makes sense to just continue that path, or should we still keep looking for other reasons that might have contributed?
So, so at one point, I said, yeah, it's the insurance. There's an issue with insurance, but I didn't say how that affected riders, the number of rides, right? Because we started with that, it's like the number of rides dropped. We don't know why. And then I tell you, hey, there's some issue with regulation with the drivers. But you can say, well, what that has anything to do with then the rides, right?
Yeah.
And so then you have to, at that point, say, okay, let me think, and these affect the number of rides? And then you start thinking logically, well, what do customers want? They want a great experience and they want to pay the lowest possible. Mm-hmm. So how does this insurance thing can affect the experience of the user? Mm-hmm. Or how can it affect the price, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you start thinking, okay, let's start with the experience. So you basically, you go broad and then you go narrow. And then now I selected two things, either price or experience. Let me explore experience. And when I explore experience, I think, okay, what could be affected? Well, it's wait time could be one, right? Yeah, yeah. So that was one. And another thing was like the price, right? Now, as you said, we had other hypotheses, right? We it could be something else. We said here, I think.
Yeah. So that was my point. I totally agree with whatever you just said right now, because insurance or regulation could have different effects, and how does it eventually impact the ridership? That is something that we can. That is the path I definitely think we should go.
And then once I nail it to price and experience, then I can go and look at the weight, and then you don't need to do this, right? But you don't need to look at the other things. But then we said, hey, if it had not been this regulation, this insurance thing, if it had not been that, then I would have gone into this, right?
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
So that's the only thing.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
All right, guys. Very nice to meet you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for hosting.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.